research shows that people who have a higher self-worth have a higher net worth. So it turns out the saying that you accept the things that you think you deserve most actually scientifically applies. Bienvenidos, you're listening to the Careers Without Connections podcast, the podcast for first-generation professionals building their careers from scratch and navigating unfamiliar spaces. I'm your host, Gianna Linares, and today's episode is going to be a little different than my usual content, but very much adjacent and something that has just been heavy on my heart lately as I've been reflecting on the things that I've done in order to get to where I am in my career. And a lot of that reflection has come as a result of me wanting to make content and wanting it to be as valuable and educationally driven as possible. Today's episode is going to be all about how practicing self-worth and in conjunction self-love is one of the ultimate tools that you can have in order to increase your network, advance in your career, and create opportunities for yourself, as my podcast underlying theme goes. So keep in mind the definition of self-worth is the internal belief that you have value as a human being. And self-love is how you care for that value through your intentional actions. So I really feel like they go hand in hand, and you can't really talk about one without mentioning the other. So that being said, today we are going to talk about why you cannot reach your highest career potentials when you do not have this self-worth and self-love, how self-love and self-worth can help you become the best version of yourself, and how that affects your career and the amount of money that you make, and how to truly show yourself self-love through your actions that are then going to increase your self-worth. So this is a topic I feel really strongly of because I think a lot of people look at my content, or they message me, or they comment and they say things along the lines of, oh, you're so brave and you're so bold and your confidence is inspiring to me, or whatever. And I think like the way that I come off as on social media, because I have done things like move across the country by myself, create multiple jobs for myself, pitch myself for jobs, things like that, gives people the assumption that, oh, like this girl is inherently competent. But all of those things I have developed over time, right? Like I used to be someone, especially in my teenage and earlier 20s, I carried a lot of self-consciousness, a lot of self-doubt. And I think part of that just had to do with, of course, like my own inner struggles, and of course like social media, the introduction of social media becoming a big thing during the pandemic, having a lot of comparison and just things kind of being shoved down our throats in our day and age of saying this is what you have to look like, this is how much money you have to be making, this is what you have to be doing in order to be of value. And it in part also came from my cultural upbringing, because not that my parents ever raised me to be like this self-hating little fiend, but I think that my parents, because of them being immigrants and having to work a 100 times harder to get to baseline of like being able to own a home and like go on vacations and things like that, they've kind of just always felt like you had to work really, really hard and just put your head down and be humble. I think it's also a Latino thing in order to get to where you want to be, and that you also couldn't pursue things that you weren't qualified for. I think that's been a big thing that I have kind of struggled with. I've literally told my dad as I'm going through interview processes, I plan to ask for more money, or I plan to ask for a raise or whatever. And he will literally tell me I shouldn't do it. And I'm like, what do you mean I shouldn't do it? Like, I deserve it, right? And the worst that they're going to do is say no. And the last two job offers I've gotten, I asked for more money both times, and both times they gave me what I wanted, even after I was told that they didn't have more money to give me and that it wasn't an option. All of that, like my upbringing and just external factors, internal factors, negatively impacted all areas of my life. So it impacted not just career stuff, but it also impacted like who I was dating and the types of friends that I allowed into my circle. And I'm a very, very highly independent person. And so I noticed at a point in my life that I no longer do now, or I guess I don't tolerate it now, but I used to accept and attract a lot of very dependent friends because I was always the friend that was like, okay, yeah, like we're going to go here. This is like the itinerary. I'm going to drive. We can put my card down. You can pay me back later. So I would just attract a lot of dependent friends. And that's been something that I've even to this day had to be conscious of. Your social circle deeply impacts who you are as a person because you are actually the average of the five people who are closest to you. So if you have friends who are not ambitious, they want to go out and party every weekend, they sit around and they smoke a lot. If that's not what you personally are wanting to do, if you're someone who you want to be very successful, you have high goals set for yourself, you want to live a certain lifestyle and prioritize your health and your well-being and get up early on the weekends, things like that, then you have to be surrounding yourself with people who do those things. Especially when it comes to like dating and partnership, that person literally is not closer to you than anyone else in your social and immediate surrounding. I remember I used to actually avoid applying for certain like scholarships, internships, job opportunities because I would look at my resume and I would be like, oh, well, I only have serving and barista experience. And like, who am I to be applying for these things? And, these types of opportunities exist for people that are smarter than me and more experienced than me and have a better resume than me. And I used to like convince myself and talk myself out of even trying for opportunities, which now, like looking back on it, and the fact that every single positive and meaningful advancement in my career has come from me just pitching myself, asking for things, literally just going after things that on paper I'm not qualified for and getting them and learning that like, oh, okay, I actually was qualified and I learned this really quickly and I deserve to be here. And I did just as good of a job as someone who maybe had the more traditional or more qualified resume than myself. This is why you really cannot reach your highest career potential without having that self-love and self-worth. Because I truly, the way that I would talk to myself, the people that I would allow to be in my circle, the men that I would allow to date me, things like that was a reflection of what I thought that I deserved. I was settling and I was just like, oh, well, I'm lonely and I want friends. It's the pandemic. I just moved to this new college town. I'm supposed to be having a boyfriend. I'm supposed to be socializing. I'm supposed to be going out and drinking. And accepting all these things that were not in alignment with what I actually truly wanted to do and head towards, even though I was very early into like my academic and professional career. The thing is, like, I knew something was wrong because I would get so frustrated. I remember I would literally sit and like think and ask myself, why is my life the way that it is? Like, why do I want all these things and I'm not getting any of them? And I feel like I'm so far away from the friends and the career and just the type of life that I want to be living. I reflected real hard and I was like, Gianna, like you're doing the same thing every day. You're going the same places. You're talking to the same people. Things really started to change for me around the time that I got into grad school because at the time, everything I was doing was out of necessity. I was like, I need to find funding for my program. And let me just start reaching out to people, asking for help, introducing myself. And I started to secure graduate assistantships, which were highly competitive jobs that on paper I was not qualified for. I had no sort of experience other than service industry experience. There were students coming in that had done a bunch of internships and they knew things that I didn't, and they definitely had those advantages. There were second year students that I was competing with, PhD students, and I was just like, I have no money. I do not want to go deep into debt. What can I do? And so I feel like that's where I kind of really started to come out of my traditional norms and be like, what can you do that other people aren't? And like, what can you also just do differently than what you've been doing? Because so far, like, that hasn't been working for you. And I started to embrace this mindset and mentality in a lot of different areas of my life, in socializing and dating. And I feel like I started for the first time kind of trying to introduce myself to people when I was out in public, like whether it was a girl I'd seen at the gym that I was like, oh, she looks really cool. She looks strong. I want to be her friend. Or if it was a guy that I like thought was cute, I would do that every now and then. I haven't done that in a while, but I have introduced myself to people at the gym. And I think the next big thing for me after kind of coming out of that social opportunity type improvement of putting myself out there and introducing myself to people and having that open different types of doors for me, I did a solo trip. I was like, okay, you know what? The next thing for me, and I'm not saying you have to do this, but the next thing for me was I went on my first solo trip, and I decided it was going to be an international trip because I had previously gone to Europe and I was like, I want to go back really bad. And so I traveled to Berlin and Dublin by myself. It was such an amazing experience. I was like meeting new people every night, going out, introducing myself, figuring out things in a country that for the first time in my life, I was in a country that I didn't speak the language. And so that also definitely, of course, boosted my self-confidence, and also the fact that I just made the effort as a 23-year-old girl who was living on like $1,800 a month to budget and take myself to a whole other country on a vacation. Like that was one of the biggest forms of self-love I'd shown myself at the time. Then things got really wild when I graduated with my master's in 2024. I said to myself, okay, I know that I want to leave the state of Oregon. I know I want to leave my home state because I feel so stagnant here. I feel like I'm so comfortable, and overall, where I foresee myself, what I want to do, it's just not here. It doesn't exist in this state. I had known since before I even started school that I was going to leave. I had wanted to leave Oregon for a while. People would ask me, what are you going to do post graduation? I would say, oh, I'm moving. I wouldn't say I'm going to work here, I'm going to do this. I would say I'm moving out of the state. So I decided that it would be a brilliant idea to pack up my car to the brim and bring my dog and drive across the country to the great state of Philadelphia because I wanted to live in the Northeast and I wanted to explore the cities around Philly. So I was like, okay, let me start there. And like, I don't have a job. I don't know anyone. I have no friends or family out there, but like me physically being there, like it'll make all the difference, and being visible, and I'll be able to network in person. It was much easier said than done, but within a few months I did land an internship, which then turned into a full-time offer for the exact council member that I wanted to work for. I really wanted to work for the Philadelphia City Council. I really wanted to work for Councilmember Ketsi Lozada. She was the only Latina of the 17 elected officials. I feel like what she stood for just at the time really was what I wanted to do. And I really wanted to be a policy analyst. Like if you would have asked me in grad school, what's your ideal dream role out of school, I would have said, oh, I want to be a policy analyst. And that's exactly what happened. All of these things happened because I had the audacity, because I believed that I had a place or at least a chance at being in that space. And even from start to finish, like, I'm not going to lie to you, even to this day, like, I do things and I take on roles or I take on projects or I set up conversations or I agree to do things that they intimidate me and they scare me. And I have a lot of little voices in my head trying to convince me about everything that could possibly go wrong or about how I shouldn't go after it for these reasons. But I feel like having built up almost like so much proof of, okay, well, you've done this before, it's worked out, you've overcome these obstacles before. Why can't you do it again now that you're more knowledgeable and experienced in doing that exact thing? And of course, There were a number of setbacks, and there continues to be setbacks because that's just normal when you are actively looking for growth. And that is often associated with a lot of failure. Like when you are trying to do things that are just super high achieving and things that you want to do in order to become successful, naturally you're going to have setbacks a lot, and you're going to be learning from all your mistakes as you go along. And the thing about constantly seeking discomfort and growth and opportunity is like naturally you're still going to come across the same problems, but in different types of environments and different people. For example, I mentioned earlier that I tend to attract very dependent people. And I did that again when I was in Philly. And it was different though, because I was no longer in my home state. Like I had no one around me. And so that made me a lot more susceptible to tolerating low quality friends. And I found myself in that situation again with people who just, they sat around, they were unemployed, all of their friends were unemployed. And I'm just like, how am I supposed to be continuing to move forward and like being surrounded by these people that are literally sucking the life and the energy out of me because I'm the one person in their life that is doing things aside from their unemployed friend group, right? And so even though they were helping me a lot and like inviting me to their houses for dinner, and I would drop my dog off in the mornings to their apartments and things like that, I was just like, you have to let go. Like it will be fine. It will work out. Like I don't care how lonely you are. I don't care how much you like having them help you with your dog, you have to let go or you're not going to move forward. And so I gradually kind of cut them loose, and it ended up being for the better. And of course, I found a different solution to, you know, being lonely or like needing care for my dog that ultimately was more sustainable for me. Like it just worked better for me, even though, okay, sure, I have to like now pay someone to watch my dog. But I guess you could think about it as the opportunity cost of what if I continue to have a reason to continue interacting with these people. Like it just wasn't worth it to me. It was like a dead weight that I needed to cut off. And that truly goes back to the concept of self love and self worth, because when you think about loving yourself, I think about it as if I had someone in my life that I love so much and they were to come to me and tell me they're accepting low quality people into their life. They are in romantic endeavors that they know aren't good for them. Or if they were telling me that there was a career opportunity, but they were too scared to apply for it. Like I would literally tell this person that I loved, drop those friends, drop that man, and apply for that job. So that is how self love and self worth helps you become the best version of yourself, because you don't tolerate low quality or low vibrational things that don't align with what you know you're ultimately going after, even if you haven't fully realized or understood where you truly, truly want to see yourself. But like, if you have big goals or big dreams. And I think everybody has big goals and dreams, but some people kind of just convince themselves that it's not possible. Like it stays as just a dream, and they don't ever register that they have the power to turn their dreams into realities. I used to look at my decision to move across the country to a place where I didn't have any type of safety net as a mistake when I very first did it, because I remember just feeling so down on myself. Like I just graduated my master's and I'm waitressing and I'm living in this really terrible, awful apartment in a city that I don't even really like. Like it turns out, the Northeast isn't for me, which, the only way for me to figure that out was to go and live there and experience it, because visiting a place is one thing, living in a place is another. But I remember I was sitting at a pizza shop with this coworker of mine who we'd gone to get pizza after work. And I kind of was just telling her like how I was feeling about the whole thing, just I guess, contemplating if I'd made a mistake or kind of just beating down on myself for all the things that weren't happening and overlooking all the things that I had done and that I had accomplished, even though I wasn't really where I wanted to be at. Like the fact that I had even taken the initiative and taken the risk to pack up my car, drive myself across the country by myself with everything that belongs to me at this point just in the back of my car, and like had the guts to even do that. That was huge. And she ended up telling me, I can't remember how she worded it, but she was like, that's like the greatest form of self-love like you could ever do is like that you did that for yourself, that you had this dream and this ambition and this desire and you went after it. And I immediately burst into tears because I feel like sometimes when someone finally kind of reframes it for you or it clicks or I don't even remember why. I think it was just really what I needed to hear because I was feeling the complete opposite of what she was saying. I remember I was just like crying over my slice of pizza and I was like, "Thank you." Since then I've moved across the country again. I have started my podcast, which is something that I said I was going to start for probably 2, 3 years. And I've started taking content creation seriously. I'm always looking for the next thing. I don't ask myself, like, am I qualified? I just ask myself, how can I do this? How can I get this done? What are avenues that I can try to make my dream possible? All of that, I truly believe, has come from me showing myself the love of allowing myself to fail and try and take risk and get back up again after I'm knocked down, and also just having in turn the self-value of I should try and having the audacity and having the belief. None of this exactly happened overnight. Like this was years and has been years of intentionally trying to figure out like how can I care for myself and show myself the love that I need in order to step into my power and be in a mindset, be in a state of mind that is going to allow me to go after the things that I want. Now I feel like I'm always going after things that I'm not qualified for. Like I just don't care at this point. I go up and I introduce myself to people. I show up to places alone all the time. I have moved across the country multiple times. I always negotiate my salaries down. I always ask for more money. I always try to get more. I advocate for myself all the time because I love myself enough to do it. And I believe that I should be doing those things and that I deserve the potential outcome of the things that I'm pitching myself and asking for and advocating for myself for. So we've covered how not having self-love and self-worth can limit your career potential and how it can help you become the best version of yourself. But of course, like what does this look like? And I think a common question that I used to ask myself and that you're probably asking yourself too is what does this look like? What are daily actions or just habits that you can start doing in order to do this? Well, first of all, self-care. What are you feeding yourself? How many hours of sleep a night are you getting? We kind of touched on this earlier, but who are you allowing into your immediate space? Who are you giving your time and your energy to? That's incredibly important. Who are you saying no to? Like the way that you are setting your boundaries is also incredibly important. I think that's something that gets really overlooked, especially with first gen professionals. We really struggle with setting boundaries because we're kind of just like struggling so much to get to the point of where we want to be. And it feels like we're always working twice as hard to get those places. And so I think a lot of the times, like, we are just so used to working so hard that we struggle to understand, like, putting the boundaries on that and understanding also too that, like, boundaries are productive. That can sometimes mean, communicating that you need more time to do something, that you can't do something, that you're unwilling to do something. And, that varies in professional context, personal context, romantic context too. I also think that taking the time to take yourself on dates is really important. I, of course, did the extreme and I took myself on a solo international trip, but what types of places do you like to visit? It doesn't always have to be like spending money. If you don't have to take yourself out to an expensive dinner. If you love to grab a coffee and go to a museum, then do that by yourself. Doing things like that too also makes you really picky in who you allow into your life because anything someone else can give you, you already give yourself. There's also the piece of self-acceptance too, which is, like giving yourself some grace when things don't go right or you do make mistakes because ultimately you are human. It's going to happen. And you need to be kind to yourself when things go wrong or mistakes are made or just when you're having a bad day, you don't have to continue to dig a deeper hole for yourself. I think it's important to know when to step back and think, okay, how can I care for myself and get myself out of this rut to ultimately move forward? I wanted to talk about this specific topic this week because I feel like this week I've been so hard on myself. I'm about to enter into my late 20s and I look back at myself in my early 20s and I almost feel like I had so much like wasted potential. I know that a lot of my audience is students or young professionals who are about to graduate, have just graduated, and had I just had the audacity and been a little kinder to myself and treated myself the way that I would treat someone that I love and hold dearly to me, who knows the types of things that I could have achieved or like where I'd be at now, and, granted, everything is, of course, on God's timing. You can't change the past and you should never be resentful of the past because every single thing that has happened has led you up to where you are now. I truly believe if you are someone who is willing to work hard, try new things, be uncomfortable, then you deserve to go after every single career opportunity that you could possibly desire. Because at the end of the day, successful people just have the audacity and they have the mindsets and the beliefs and the self-worth that they deserve to have those big, outrageous success stories that you see and you hear about online. Of course, you mainly just hear the siloed outcomes of their success, but you don't really hear the behind the scenes stuff. And a lot of really successful people have just been beaten down over and over again and had so many doors shut in their faces until the one right person said yes, like the one right opportunity. I heard this really interesting, I don't know if it's called an analogy, but this creator, she was saying how a successful baseball player can be wildly successful, but they can still strike out 7 out of 10 times. And I think part of that self-love and that self-worth comes with, okay, this didn't work this time, but that's not because I'm not deserving of it. That just means I have to try a different way. Today, we covered why you can't reach your highest potential without having self-love and self-value, how self-love and self-worth can help you become the best version of yourself, and how that can affect your career prospects and your income that you make. And also, we covered how to truly show yourself self-love and in turn increase your self-value through different types of actions that you take. If you made it to the end of this podcast, thank you so much for listening. If anything in this podcast resonated with you, please subscribe, give me a follow, leave a comment. I encourage you to comment your main takeaways in the comment section. If you have anything, you never know how you might interpret something a little differently than I did that could really make a big impact for someone else. And feel free to drop questions as well so that I know what to talk about and include in future podcasts. My Instagram and TikTok is just my name at Gianna Linares. I will leave this information in the show notes too. And I'm very active on LinkedIn, so feel free to message me there as well. Ciao.